Hi, my name is Nick Sousanis. I'm an associate professor in liberal studies, and I started and run the comic studies minor here at San Francisco State University. So I was a comics maker as a kid, as a little kid. My first word is Batman. I have a much older brother who read comics to me as a kid, and that's like how I learned to read at a very early age. And so I was really into them. And yet, when I came to university, you couldn't study comics. No such thing. Didn't exist. And even if it had existed, it would have been sort of in the illustration sort of side, and I wanted to do intellectual things. So I ran an arts magazine in Detroit, and in 2004 I made some comics for the presidential election that year, and that really showed how I could, not see comics purely as entertainment, but comics as education. I think we tend to, especially as we get older, dismiss play as being something for little kids and just sort of leisurely activity. And I think, you watch little kids learn and how quickly they learn through play. And I think the same is true for adults. I think it's always been part of my teaching philosophy. I was a tennis pro, so like a lot of my teaching comes from us, teaching sport. So that's always been part of it. But at the same time, the first class I taught when I was still at Columbia would always do sort of drawing activities and comics making activities, even in the midst of, a studies class. It was about teaching comics. The research books didn't come in until late that semester for some reason, so we did all the comics making activities up front. And I remember a few weeks in starting to apologize to the students, and I'm like, I'm sorry, we really haven't done any. And then I caught myself, and I'm like, we'd really done a lot. The amount that you learn through that act of hands-on play and how that informs your own thinking, I think it's really important to bring it back. And it is easy to forget, like it does feel like you're just playing around, but that's where you learn, and then it's fun, and then you want to do more, and then you bring in all those other things. I have a pretty diverse background. I was a comics maker as a kid. My undergrad degree is in mathematics. I have a degree in math and art, doctorate in education. I was a tennis pro. I ran an arts magazine. I'm the child of a physics teacher, and I subbed for him. The child of an environmental studies teacher, and had all our classes. So I have a lot of diverse things, and like learning to teach tennis, I would think about art things and physics things to do for that. Coming in to teach comics, I have experience as a maker, I have experience as a studier. The kinds of comics I make tend to be educational. I make philosophy in comics form, scientific concepts in comics form. And I love the idea that each of them comes with a different perspective and different experiences. And some come as like exquisite drawers, and some come not, they haven't been drawn since they were 7 and they were told they were no good, or they got in trouble for it in school. And having them all together to learn from each other, and the idea that we all have our own ways of making meaning, and putting them together in the room and running them through paces and trying things and playing, they start to discover their own ways of making meaning. So I'd have to say the project, but it's just both project and publication that has been the most significant and has certainly influenced my teaching is my dissertation, which was subsequently published as the graphic novel Unflattening. When I initially started this work, I didn't think about it as revolutionary. It wasn't my intent to do that. It was just like matter of fact, like, why can't I use comics? In the act of starting it, I realized that this hadn't been done, because it hadn't, and that I had to make an argument for why it was done. So the work became very much about itself, and very much an argument why it should exist, and why things like it, why comics, instead of 12-point type, double space, 1.5 by 1 by 1 by 1 inch margins being scholarship, that there are other ways and that they were legitimate. And as I work on the sequel to the work very slowly, it's to think how much your body is a part of making your thinking. And again, we tend to think of school, and not only do we discount play, we put people in chairs and we put them in desks and we make them sit and face that direction. And those are some of the ideas I explore in Unflattening. But in the more I'm in a classroom, the more I learn from my students how much we learn through the act of moving our hands, moving our bodies, and how much that shapes my work, which then shapes my teachings. There is some pressure on us to know what we're supposed to do. Like 19-year-old, you show up at college and you're supposed to know your degree, you're supposed to know what your life is going to look like, and the world moves pretty quickly, so it's hard to say that. And I don't, if I look back at my life, I was making comics when I was like 4 years old. So you'd say, well, that makes perfect sense that I'm doing this now, but it's not. You saw me at 20, you wouldn't guess that this is what I was going to do. It might just be a thing that was a guy that liked to draw and is on the side. But I think the opportunity at a university is that you can explore, and so making friends, wandering into departments that you've never been to, and just seeing what's there, it might light up something in you that you never would have lit up otherwise, and might take you in directions you just didn't know. Yeah, I'd say go for that. So we're hanging out in the comics lab right now, which is my office. At one point it was the main classroom for the comics courses. Often there'll be as many as like 12 students just hanging out in here, making comics, reading, working on their other homework. So it's become a really exciting space, and I hope to keep growing it. And students should feel welcome. Like we have open hours that they can just come in and be part of it, and the students will be here to keep the door open.